We've got Javier Gomez on the show. We've never done this before on this channel. Private equity looking to acquire commercial landscaping, HVAC, and waste management companies. All the way from Austin, Texas. Javier, we've never had people of your ilk on the channel before, so welcome.
Ilk,
Thank
that's
you.
a interesting word choice.
Yeah. I'm happy to connect with you guys and glad to share, a little bit of knowledge and insight in private equity. There's a lot to learn. It's a very, very big landscape. And in fact, that's kind of why I've been, very narrowly focused. We can get into it on the call, but I cover just a small segment of all the things that could encompass private equity.
And we talked about it a little bit beforehand, but maybe for the viewers, can you explain like just basic differences between private equity, venture capital, and
Yeah.
like what private equity actually means? Maybe we
Yeah.
start with that first.
Yeah. It's a very, very broad term. So, we'll zoom up to the highest level. There's private equity and public equity. And so public equity is, the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, everything you can invest in. Any, retail investor can go on whatever Fidelity buy a share of Apple. There are a lot of rules that those companies have to follow to be part of that market. And so then everything that is not public equity is therefore by definition private equity. Still kind of all of those securities need to comply with SEC regulations in terms of who can invest in those companies and who can't. The SEC is particularly kind of aware that within private equity, there's a greater risk of retail investors or unsophisticated investors to be taken advantage of. So there's strict limitation on income limits to who can invest and not invest. So there's accreditation and different types of structures in terms of what you can invest in. And then to your question, then we get okay. So there's public equity, private equity. Beneath the umbrella of private equity is venture capital. Venture capital is more for growth or unproven business models. So you could be revenue, but pre-earnings or kind of like high growth, and you just need to you need cash to grow and invest and continue to whatever hire software engineers, whatever it is, right? But like high growth, unproven, that's all venture capital. And it follows the same kind of structure, similar. There are different tools and options and warrants that you can use based upon this massive future expected valuation of the business. And then you go on the other side of like not high growth, more stable. That's what traditionally people think of when they think private equity. So we're going to buy, massive, let's say a company like a company that's building, I don't know, bulldozers, right? So like we're always going to need bulldozers. This company's been around for 500 or 50 years. It's generating $500 million of revenue. It's generating $50 million EBITDA, and it's been doing that for the last 20 years. Very, very stable. We know what we're going to do with it. And so we could finance that company with a combination of debt and equity. So it allows us to kind of leverage more than we could with the venture capital firm. That's going to have to be all equity, right? No bank is really going to want to take a risk on that venture capital investment. But all of those things, bringing this full circle, all of those things are private equity. But what I do specifically is more buying stable businesses that have been around for a long time. And really the value that I'm adding to them is, so I talked about, the company's been in business for 50 years. After 50 years, maybe the owner is 70 years old. Nobody in the family wants to take over the business. And potentially there's an opportunity to I don't know, expand overseas, right? And so we have a team with a value creation team that kind of identifies what's the best strategy for this company. And then we have also a team of seasoned advisors who can help open doors and also provide some recommendations on what are the 2 or 3 next steps we need to take in the next 5 years to maximize the value of this asset.
So just to simply summarize, a private equity is acquiring something with an established roadmap that may have some value and expansion potentially, but it doesn't necessarily have to, right? It's just an established roadmap. We know everything that we need to know about the company, as well as banks would be comfortable in it in giving a loan for this company, just because everything's so well established. Venture capital is more, this is a hypothetical here, right? This is the hypotheticals we see as being possible realities, but no guarantees, right? Thus banks say, no, thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. And both of those things technically are called private equity. So when you're saying venture capital, that is also private equity. It's just a specific segment of private equity. But then I don't know. Traditionally, when people say private equity, they think more of what you described: buying an established business, stable, and it's credit worthy.
Yeah. The way that's a really good explanation, especially differentiating between private and public equities. Really simple way to look at it. VCs maybe more high risk, or not maybe, more high risk. The way I break it down is like tech companies. Anything tech usually is VC, unless they are profitable and mature, then private equity comes in. And there's different rounds of financing, right? There's like
Yeah.
pre-seed, investors. Like, how do you get involved in this, or maybe break some of that down for everyone?
For venture capital?
Yeah, for venture capital or PE. I mean, I don't know if you guys do it similarly to like pre-seed. Well, you wouldn't do pre-seed because you're buying a mature
Right.
company, right? So
Yeah. But
maybe
if you
that's the
no, if you did, I mean, I do have some knowledge of, if you're really interested in those high growth moonshot opportunities, a good thing to do would be to get involved in an angels network. So you can go on LinkedIn and, whatever if you're in San Diego, just San Diego Angels Network. I'm sure there's a network of 30 to 60 people who get together and review deals. And so it's not just you writing a check. It could be, hey, I have this company, founder team needs whatever, 500K. And so you write a check for 100, and you have 4 other friends or people in this network who would also write $100,000 check.
interesting. Yeah, well, Chris and I have been part of like a syndicate once on an Angel Lee or Angel.Lee. I forgot the name of it. This was a few years ago. Invested in a cricket food company. Like they would make bars out of cricket powder. Um,
Scrumptious, by the way.
terrible,
Very
terrible,
good.
terrible. But you can put as little as 10,000. I think at the time you had to be a accredited investor, which we were back then. We definitely are now, but we haven't really invested in anything private equity other than our own ventures and a couple of like these syndicates. But how does one get to be a private equity guy? Like how did you get this job? Does it I feel
Yeah.
like everyone gets there on accident somehow?
I think it really is about relationships and identifying what part of the puzzle that you can solve. So for me, I'm a private equity operator, and so the value that I serve my partners. So let's talk about the different activities or the different components of a private equity firm. So we'll start from the beginning. you need to raise money. So there, if you don't have the money, you can't do anything, right? So you raise a fund, and the fund has a mandate. And so the private equity firm goes to all, family offices, sovereign wealth funds, whatever it may be, endowments, and they explain the private equity mandate. We are going to go out and buy X. We're going to buy senior living facilities. We're going to go out and buy whatever, gas stations. It could be any kind of mandate. So we're going to buy companies within this size, this sector, this industry, this region. And you can be, as flexible or as narrow as you want to be in that mandate. And then let's say that part is successful, you raise $200 million. Then the next piece is you need to go and find a group of, advisors, board members, people who are going to help you execute that mandate. And so, you hire that network of advisors, and then you hire a value creation team. So once you buy the company, and maybe even like before, you need to be crystal clear about how you're going to add value to the company within the first 100 days, within the first 6 months, within the first year, and then what are the major milestones in year 2, 3, 4, 5, and then how are you going to get it ready for sale? Who are the buyers going to be after you've raised the value of that asset, and how are you going to market to those people to get maximum value on exit? And then you need operators like me who are going to step in and provide a transition for the existing ownership team, whether it's one owner or multiple owners. And so that's the piece that I serve, right? So I've been in a variety of industries for the last 15 years. I've worked in finance, so I understand how to structure deals, and also how to pull different levers within the business at different stages of the business. Operations and strategy, so both thinking of the thing that we should be doing and then managing to maintain that original vision, although being flexible on details so that we can execute as effectively as possible. Sometimes you have people who can do the strategy and then it just doesn't work once you hit the ground, and then vice versa. Some people are just bias for action, like do. Like some CEOs just think, oh, like if I just keep myself busy all day, then I'll create value. But it's about doing the right things and and being busy at the same time and making sure people feel part of the process. So that's the value that I provide is that last part, the operator part.
So you
So
step
busy
in.
I was just gonna say, busy work's not necessarily productive work.
Exactly.
What I hear you saying.
Yeah,
And is
absolutely.
so because you are an operator, is that why your niche is so focused on HVAC, landscaping, and things like that? Like plumbing? Do
Yeah.
you do plumbing, or is that out of the?
Plumbing, electrical, yes. Um, it's a variety of things that draw me to those industries. So one, I like to do things or focus on investments that are mission critical. People absolutely need it, and kind of every minute that you don't have it, it causes harm or some kind of pain or loss of value. So you think of, your power goes out, you're running a factory. Every minute that you're down costs you money, right? Costs you labor, costs you sales, you're late on contracts, you disappoint customers. That's a terrible outcome, right? So you need a great vendor to go to fix your power, or if you're going to build this building, whatever it is. Everything like mission critical is something that I care about a lot. And then if it's not going to be mission critical, like commercial landscaping, it's not, whatever, I can't cut my tree immediately, like nobody really cares. But the thing that I love about commercial landscaping is that it's highly recurring, right? So like, that every 2 weeks, every month, we're going to show up, we're going to do a great job, we're going to keep the facility looking clean. And so that's highly recurring revenue, low share of wallet. The reason that I care about share of wallet is because when times get hard or things are difficult, people look at the highest expenses first and try to renegotiate those. It takes a really long time for people to go and look at their commercial landscaping budget. Like, hey, how much are we paying to cut the grass? Like that's very low on the list of
I
things to
see.
cut.
So like during a downturn, like a recession or something, you're saying because it's such a low budget item
Yeah,
compared to like household spending, it's one of the last things to get removed,
yeah.
which makes sense. Similar to pool cleaning, no? Pool service, like,
Yeah, very, very highly recurring,
mm,
low complexity, it's just very, very simple.
mm,
If you can hire decent people with some kind of work ethic to show up on time and be clean and tidy and be kind to customers,
yeah.
it's a very great business to run.
It's crazy to think that private equity is involved in these kind of things. You don't really think of that. You think of like our industry, healthcare, of course, private equity's there, flipping doctors' offices to bigger health systems, clinical research, biotech for sure. I mean, biotech, they get pre-public, then they turn it public. But these kind of recurring, simple businesses you don't think of makes sense. Is it something that is scalable? Because I imagine most of the business owners that sell to you, like you said, they were looking to retire, they've been doing this forever. They never really thought of scaling it necessarily. Like, are you,
Well, wouldn't the scale be when other owners in the community find out, hey, this one's sold to private equity? Maybe they'd be interested in buying us too, right? Wouldn't that be the scale?
That happens all the time. Yes. So then, you get to like a buyer like me immediately gets, hundreds of new customers, which are accounts that I didn't have to earn or fight for myself. And I would love to have. So that just allows me the ability through debt. And again, we talked about why banks would love this because, this business has been running for 20 years. It's been on a very steady growth trajectory, good financial sturdiness, especially if it did well during COVID. That's great. This is a well-run business. If the owner is absentee, even better, it can run without him. So somebody else can just kind of step in and maintain operations. And then the other piece is that they probably most often haven't been focused on efficiencies, like great route management, like making sure that job one of the day is in one part of the town and job two isn't on a completely different side of town. So you lose an hour just driving from job to job. Like those things aren't top priority, but that's where you make the money.
is that where you bring in your tech systems and like,
Absolutely.
do you develop those yourself or are they just third-party systems that you use? And,
Combination,
Mhm.
combination of things. Yeah.
I always wonder why these not site owners, but business owners don't leverage tech more. Like, there are a lot of efficient, I know we've recently, 3 years ago, on a new business, went almost all in on tech, and the efficiencies are crazy. Once you like peel the first few layers and you look at, what you've been doing wrong or like taking forever to send an invoice, for example, as opposed to just doing it right away. I mean, all those little things, I guess, add up.
I think it's a combination of things. I think one, the first thing is comfortable. Why have to learn something new, and in the organization too. When you have whatever 50 employees and you try to teach them a new piece of technology, a new process, that's painful to do.
Yeah.
Uh, and nobody's really sure if this is going to work. Is
But
this
now
going to be?
you're gonna have to do it. You buy the
Yeah,
new company. Now you have
yeah.
to do it. So you do the painful stuff. Is it you personally, or you have like a management team? Like, do you, Javier, physically move to where you just bought, or do you just
That's
do it remotely?
no, that's a great question. Yeah. So me, my family, we will move to wherever
Wow.
I buy the company. So that's also a component when I'm talking to an owner. From the very first call, and I've done my research ahead of the call. before the first call, I have to ask I have to ask myself if I would be willing to move to wherever, Albuquerque.
Yuma, Arizona, would you go?
Yeah, exactly. And I've never been to Yuma, but my guess
115
is,
degree summers.
yeah, probably not.
Uh, but what about like having a management team to be able to send them out, like instead of you going, but you have a management team to go out, like traveling
Yeah.
managers? Because I know in
So,
our business, that's what they do. They send like an executive team or a management team to actually go to the clinics after they buy and, figure out the inefficiencies and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, that was the value creation team. So we talked about there's a team that raises money, there's the advisory who's going to be on your board, and
Hmm.
then there's the value creation team. These are all ex-consultants from, McKinsey, Bain,
Wow.
Sloan, LEK, whatever. We have a team of those. And so immediately after we buy, maybe even before we buy it, they come in and we plan out, we map out what's the first 100 days going to look like, what's the first year, what are the major milestones that we want to accomplish, and then just roughly, what do we think we should, where do we think we should be in year 2, year 3? Like we've already mapped that out.
Wow. What kind of multiple? I mean, I know this changes every year, but like right now, 2024, April 2024 to be exact.
Yeah.
What kind of multiple on EBITDA is typical for like your line of business?
It really depends on the size of the business, smaller business, and then it also depends on just customer concentration. We talked about recurring versus project-based revenue,
Hmm.
how strong their management team is, or how fundamental the owner is to the day-to-day operations. All of those things impact what we're willing to pay. But in general, I can tell you that, I've submitted offers on companies between the 3 times EBITDA range to 7. So
Wow.
that's kind of my range. So all-star, high performing, absentee owner, more than 5 million EBITDA is gonna get the like 6 to 7.
Mhm.
Um, 1.5 million EBITDA, highly project-based business, owner is like fundamental to day-to-day operations. Like they're running out the crews and running the whatever, the Monday more everyday meetings, the stand-ups. That means that I'm gonna have to get sucked into that and hire a COO, which is gonna kind of
Yeah.
kill my EBITDA a little bit. And so for those businesses, I paid, 3 to maximum 4 times.
So if you're a business owner and you're looking to sell for maximum return, you need to remove yourself from the operations.
Yes.
And another takeaway from everything Javier said there, Dan, I'm sure you got this and made note of it, but I think the industry, the hotter it is, the higher the EBITDA, right? Whereas landscaping, not
Yeah.
necessarily really hot, probably
It's not
you can
sexy.
purchase, right, you can purchase it at a lesser EBITDA. Tech, or in our case, the medical industry, it's kind of hot right now, higher EBITDA.
It's supply and demand. And so it's just how many companies are,
Yep.
are of size, and then how many buyers want that thing right now for whatever reason. There's hot and cold cycles for everything. And so, like whatever, like a year ago, everybody wanted an NFT. So NFTs were worth whatever, 20, 40, 50,000, but now
Mhm.
nobody wants one. So every industry kind of has its hype cycle. Um, and it's really just supply and demand.
Yeah, dot-com bubble is a good example of that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, all you needed was a website. You get 100 million for it. Literally, that's all you needed, right?
Yeah.
It's just because of the hype.
So some of your accomplishments, Javier, are pretty impressive. I'm looking at your LinkedIn, and Javier's LinkedIn is underneath the video. Scaled Amazon Canada, Amazon Mexico, and Amazon Brazil from 100 million to 1 billion in revenue in 2020. achieved by creating a scalable system that integrated with these countries' Amazon's global supply chain. So you were working with Amazon directly
Yeah, I was
during that
working
time?
at Amazon. Yeah, that's right. I was at Amazon for about over 5 years. So that was the first thing that I did at Amazon.
Well, you were at the right place at the right time. 2020, you couldn't ask for a better setup
Yeah,
uh, to expedite growth in Amazon.
He
every
also,
every person that I worked with, I worked with people who launched, the Prime program. I worked with people who launched grocery. There were always people who did extraordinary things and did even bigger things after we worked together.
Javier also founded a commercial real estate company that invested in 365 units in 2 event venues, gain the insights. That's where you gain the insights into business models like commercial landscaping, commercial HVAC, waste management. Do you think commercial? I just had a conversation with the business manager. It's actually our research clinic that we rent space from is a plumbing company in Yuma. Maybe I'll make an introduction. Um, but the business manager, she's essentially our landlord. And we were talking about commercial real estate, and I told her, Chris and I own a commercial building. We're not too hot on the future of commercial real estate. What are your thoughts on the future of commercial real estate?
It really is a story about the interest rate. Interest rate kind of drives all of that. And so at a current interest rate levels, it's nuts. It's really hard to make a buck in commercial real estate right now because there's so many other options that are better. But for the risk profile, there's almost no better asset, right? We're not making any more land. And so if you're sitting on something, kind of the rule is, don't sell it, hold it for the long term, especially if you've got, old, low debt on it. Uh, Keep it for the long term.
So you think that narrative of everyone's gonna work from home, no one's gonna need commercial, you think that was a false narrative? Or you think there's some
I,
truth to this?
I think there's an opportunity to rezone existing office buildings to multifamily or mixed use. So I think there are a lot of people right now who are acquiring office buildings and taking a little bit of a risk and rezoning that to some higher, better use and making a really good spread on that. But it takes some work. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time and a lot of politicking to get things rezoned. But property has value just inherently. And there's going to be, especially in a good market, growing population, job growth, higher incomes. People need places to live and work and shop.
And then you're also a first generation Mexican American, bilingual in Spanish and English. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Southern California.
That's
So
why LA Clippers fan, I see this.
yeah.
I'm one of the few remaining LA Clippers fans. Interestingly enough, I like them less when they're actually good. I enjoy the
Really?
losing. Yeah, I enjoy losing. So this year they're doing really good, so I'm like I have a less interest. I like when they're losing better.
Yeah.
Um, but that's cool. It's rare to meet Clipper fans.
Yeah, especially, going back when I was a kid, Magic Johnson was playing all those, big James Worthy,
Yeah,
Vlade Divac, like I can just go back and I was just like against the grain,
yeah.
Clippers.
Vlade would smoke a pack of cigarettes at halftime,
That's right.
in the bathroom stall and then be ready for the second half. Uh,
Crazy day.
Private equity. So do you recommend this, like doing what you do to someone? You went to one of the best business schools there is, the Chicago School of Business. Um, do you recommend, maybe I'm asking selfishly here for myself and Chris, we've been operators within research for 2 decades. We've accrued a fair amount of wealth. I mean, not like private equity levels, but we're doing good. Do you recommend this if someone's actually interested, or do you think it's like what kind of person you need to be be willing to do what you do?
I think it's somebody who's good at building relationships. So it's just like you're gonna need partners. Private equity is all about, if you're doing big things, and you're not doing it alone, and so you need to be somebody who is good at incorporating feedback, implementing that feedback, building great relationships over time. And then all of the other things that make a great entrepreneur. So it's the grit, the determination, the persistence, getting or recovering from failure, all of those other things must have.
Interesting. I would have thought before Dan asked that question, I would have thought the primary set of, what am I looking for? Can't think of the word. But what you would need as a person to be able to work in this industry would be able to accurately and realistically define value. Right? So in other words, what's its intrinsic value and what possibilities do I have that are realistic? That would have been what I would have guessed would have been the most important attribute. That's the word I was looking for. Most
Yeah.
important attribute. But what I hear you saying is something entirely different.
Yeah, because there could always be in private equity, if you don't have the fundamental things that I talked about, the identifying value, there could always be somebody else who can
Taking
do
care of
that.
that.
But if you can't really manage long-term relationships and incorporate feedback requests and incorporate feedback, there's just so many, it's such a labyrinth to create, to identify, acquire, and grow a company, 10x over 5 years. It's just a maze. If you can't do those things, you will not be successful.
Interesting.
But
I've
you
had-
have to be able to see what companies have that potential for 10x, right?
Yeah. So you would need to find, like, have somebody on your team that can do that. Like, if you have it, great. But if you don't, it's not a
Sure.
killer. It's not a career killer.
So Dan and I, and Dan probably knows specifically who I'm thinking of, work with people, colleagues that are very positive about outcomes, right? This is not somebody you would want to put in this position of, hey, find 10x value for me, because they'll find you 100x, right? That's not entirely realistic.
Yeah, we're super conservative in the world we work with or work in. And that's the other part. You need to make sure that you're not, like, it's nice to think on the positive side, but then you're the one who's going to have to do it. Like, if you're the operator, you have to think of every stage. Like, I like it now. This is a great deal. I think there's value here. I'm gonna 10x this company. Okay, you 10x it. Who's going to pay you 10x? How many potential buyers do you have who are willing and able to pay 10x for that? If the answer is not more than whatever, 100 buyers, this is not a good deal.
Are we
Sure.
seeing the BlackRocks and the Vanguards or whatever getting into this stuff like HVAC and landscaping and things like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, pest control, there are a
Really?
lot of hot
Wow.
industries right
What
now that
about
are
plumbing?
plumbing, HVAC,
Wow.
waste management, water treatment, metal recycling.
These guys ran out of places to put their money, huh?
It's just stable, right? You just, what are we always going to need, and it's not going to be disrupted by AI and all these
So
other
true.
stuff.
So true. Plumbing, no matter how much you innovate as far as tech, AI, you're gonna flush your toilets, you're gonna use water, things are gonna get clogged, things are gonna burst. Makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. I see things through a lens of, because I think I told you yesterday, Chris and I start doing some advisory stuff. Matter of fact, our next call at 10:30 is potential advisory shares in a biotech or like a pre-public device company. Uh, so we're starting to delve into that world. So far we don't have to put money in, right? I tend to stay away from those because I don't think I'm ready for that. But it's sweat equity, right? And matter of fact, our company name is DSCS Sweat Equity and Investments. And we started little by little putting like throwing some money behind things. Like if we identify a business that has potential, we've developed a lot of our business through social media and videos and podcasts. So obviously we see growth through that lens of, well, this is a great business. It has a great bucket to catch more water, but they're not doing anything social media. So that's something where we could come in and say, hey, we can at least 2x it, if not 10x. That's one of the lenses we see things through. Of course, there's operational inefficiencies and things like that. What what is the proper lens, I guess, to look like for you? Because I think I would be interested in doing what you do, minus the moving anywhere part. I don't think I'm ready for that, man. But everything else, I think I'd be down to do or to try. Do you often think, hey, you know what? It's rewarding, it's fun, but I can just start my own startup instead of buying someone else's. Like what? Why do you not go that route?
Yeah, it's well, it depends on what kind of new thing. So a lot of new things have a high degree of risk. So very high likelihood of failure, especially if it's a new concept. If it's an existing concept, then you have to hope that you can steal share and provide some value that incumbents aren't providing. So when you buy an existing company, you get to leapfrog all of that immediately. Somebody's already done the hard work.
Hmm.
And now the value that you can add as an experienced operator in the industry is, like there's a certain skill set that's required to take a company from 0 to maybe $10 million. And there's a very different skill set to take it from 10 to 100. And that's me.
Which one do you think is easier?
They're both very difficult. It's extremely to get from 0 to 1 million is extremely difficult. If you've gotten there, you've done better than 90% of the other business owners in the US. So like congratulations. And if you get, from 1 to 10, also congratulations, especially if you've done it in less than 20 years. And people tend to kind of peter out or plateau at 10. At 10, you probably have somewhere between 10 and 50 employees, maybe a few more. And it's just hard. And then you haven't figured out how to like delegate and develop leaders and build this new layer of middle management that it takes to get past that.
Hmm. I hear you. The middle management, and Chris too, we've only done a handful of businesses uh at 1 million. In our industry, the profit margins are really high. With one of our clinics here, we could get to 3, but the market's so hot, we'll probably sell before we reach that. But this whole idea of like a layer, like a middle management, I see why it's important, but it also stunts growth in many ways, if not done properly. And it's something I've never done. And I maybe never say never, like the next phase of my career involves dealing with middle management. I feel like middle management protects their own jobs more than the company's growth prospects, and it takes like a very vigilant executive team to sniff that out early. And that's one of the things that scares me about adding a middle management layer to a business.
Number one concern of owners or concern and potentially complaint is their employees not thinking like owners. And it's debatable on whether or not we should expect that from them. And the best that we can do is to share a vision and hope that that inspires them and hire people who have a similar kind of mindset in terms of what they want to accomplish. And hopefully we have incentives and like a career growth plan that they can see like, oh, okay, I'm in, I'll buy in. I'll buy into your vision, not my vision. I'm building your company. Like, but if you can bring me along and show me how you're gonna benefit me, great, I'm in. I'll go on this ride.
Chris, what do you think about all this? We have to still play our game, but final thoughts or questions? This
So
is
you do
super
have,
interesting.
so you do have forms of profit sharing, I would assume.
Bonuses, like it's performance related. You need to make a lot of these things performance related. And so
Okay.
you need to manage, set whatever. Everybody knows their job and every job has KPIs. And so you can easily tell for every whatever, down to the admin assistant, to the janitor, to whatever, everybody needs a KPI.
So you have bonuses in place for the janitors.
You could, why not?
Okay. Especially if it's a janitorial service, I assume.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Clean, like get this whatever customer 5-star customer rating on 95% of it. Like you could just be
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everything needs a KPI. I'm gonna write that down because I agree. We just haven't done it.
Yeah.
Nope. No, we usually do profit sharing.
70% of companies roughly managers don't, implement KPIs across the company.
I think we need to
And
do that at YCT.
so you're opposed to profit sharing and favor KPI.
Well, the thing with profit sharing is depending on what kind of business and functions you have, everybody gets a share, right? So you get this freeloader mentality. I don't like whatever. Bill is working his ass off. I'm not. We're both going to get the same profit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair.
Well, that's if the profit sharing is company wide, right?
Yeah.
I'm more speaking to that middle executive, right? The person that's taking certain responsibilities that you need covered. Whereas you're saying they're not thinking as an owner. Well, here's how we make them think like an owner, profit sharing, right? The more you increase our profits, the larger your bonus will be. But you could do that, I suppose, KPI as well. I mean, it could be structured identically, just you have set metrics opposed to you just get a percentage.
Exactly.
I'm down for that too, because we're dealing with this with we have 5 employees and we've just done flat bonuses for everyone, but there are starting to show signs of like certain people doing more than others. And, I think having a KPI for like specific KPIs is a better way to go about it.
Yeah.
So I agree with that, Dan, for just everyday employees, but those who are replacing the owner per se, I don't still have a problem with profit.
No.
I don't necessarily have a problem with profit sharing there
Oh, at
personally.
the executive
Yeah.
level, no,
I
but I'm
agree.
talking at the workforce level.
I agree
Right.
with Chris. The COO, GM, those people are very much EBITDA focused, top line and EBITDA focused.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So their bonus can be based on profit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, we can
Okay.
go forever on this. We've got to have you on again, Javier. Maybe in a
Yeah.
few months.
Sure.
We'll do a
Yeah.
part 2. Well, we appreciate it, Javier. I think we need to do this again. Part 2, part 3. It's good that we got connected, and everybody go connect with Javier on LinkedIn. I'm connected with him as well. And thank you for coming out.
Yeah. Thank you for being on. Lots of great information. As Dan said, part 2, I think, is in order.
Oh yeah. We gotta go nerd out on some of this stuff.
Let's do it, guys. Let's make a lot of money together.
All
Sounds
right.
good. I like that.
Take
All
care.
right. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Javier.